This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Thursday. How's everybody doing today? Well, let's talk a little silver gold, shall we? Let's start with the number of ounces of silver needed to buy an ounce of gold is now 30-year high. Silver is now a bargain price when compared to gold, and it's the perfect time to protect a portion of your savings with silver. And of course, Silver Gold Bull has a wide variety of the best value silver for every budget. Simply text or email Grahame for details. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to precious metals, he'll make sure you get the answers to your questions and recommend the best possible products to meet your investing goals. Once again, that's down in the show notes, folks. Anytime you're on silvergoldbull.ca.com, just make sure you reference the SNP. You know who was in the trade show at the Cornerstone Forum was Guardian. And I think that I've been getting tons of feedback from everybody, but it was cool to see them have their brand showcased at the forum with the podcast, and I was excited to see them there on Friday night. And while they do things to help you to make life easier, and one of the things they got technicians on shift from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day, including weekends, and they don't charge you anything extra for evening or weekend service. That means you can get the help you need on your schedule without worrying about surprise costs. And if you want more information, look no further. Just go to guardianplumbing.ca and you'll find the boys all over there. Ignite Distribution, they're a high-service supply company based in Wainwright, Alberta, specializing in automotive parts and a wide range of additional products, including safety equipment, welding supplies, fasteners, and janitorial items. Operating as a Napa Auto Parts retailer, the company has recently expanded its Wainwright location to a 15,000 square foot facility, fully stocked to meet all your needs. And that's Shane Stafford. So give him a call, 780-842-3433. Farmers, talking specifically to you, I assume you've heard of precision planting and how it's revolutionized farming with innovative technology to boost efficiency and profitability. What started with a planter optimization now spans the entire crop cycle, offering hardware, software, and upgrades that work seamlessly across brands and models, giving you unmatched control over your operations. Locally, we're talking GoTech. It's evolving to serve you even better. They got Scott, your trusted expert, and now Jeff has joined the team, bringing fresh energy and ideas together. They're committed to delivering the same hands-on support you've come to rely on. So make sure you check out GoTech here in the Lloydminster area. Substack, well, the entire Cornerstone Forum is now up. It's broken to 4 parts. If you haven't signed up for Substack yet, make sure you go down in the show notes and you do that. Like I say, everything's there. There's parts of it that you can see for free, and then if you want to become a paid member and watch the entire thing, that is an option as well. But 4 different parts on the Cornerstone Forum now up on Substack, and I just finished watching Chuck Prodnick's. I had seen parts of it when he was doing it, but man, that's a pretty powerful story he tells, and you should go check it out. You should really do yourself a favor and go check out Chuck Prodnick on Cornerstone Forum Part 3 of 4. He's in that part. It is it's a spectacular. There's a reason why Chuck's on the stage, and it's for stories like that, and you might be surprised to see where he takes it. Either way, the entire Cornerstone Forum now up on Substack. I hope you go check it out. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a review, make sure to retweet, make sure to share with a friend, and let's get the word out, shall we? Now, let's get on to that tale of the tape. He's a brand designer, and during lockdowns, he started VesperDigital on X with the purpose of exposing the government and getting Justin Trudea out of office. I'm talking about Vesper. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast. Today, I am joined by Mr. Vesper. Sir, thanks for answering the last-minute text. I appreciate it. As I was telling you before we started, after we did the 12-hour live stream, me and Twos were talking, and I didn't feel right for probably 4 days. It wasn't like I was, like there was anything wrong with me. And I don't even mean the Liberals winning. I just mean like the attention to detail, all the guests coming on, 12 hours of live streaming. It was an uber success, and I appreciate you being on for that. I thought I got a lot of great feedback from the time you and others were on, not to mention the rest of the guests. But then it just like went right into, I was 11 days away from an event, and I mean, I was saying to you before, like it's like I unplugged from everything because my sole focus was making sure I didn't screw it up. And so I appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to a friendly chat. I want to know what Vesper's thoughts on 11 or what we're over that 2 weeks of Carney Rain and the new appointments and everything else. But how's Vesper doing?
Vesper's fine. He's surviving this. I'm not as catastrophically devastated, even though I know it's not probably in Canada's best interest. I haven't pulled away from politics. What I've done is I've kind of just reframed the situation for myself, where I'm like, all right, it's not so much that I've had to realize a few things. It's not so much that the politicians or the government or any of these people are mostly the problem. I realize that there's a lot of mental capture, and a lot of people are just going to vote Liberal. It doesn't matter what you show them. I literally have on my X, by the way, Shaun, and for anyone that's watching this, if you go down, I have a clip that shows like 5 people from BC in the Trudeau era, where, remember the blackface scandal, the SNC scandal and everything? Just 5 people that I've labeled idiot 1, idiot 2, idiot 3. No matter what you show them, they just play it off. Like there's actually a girl, I think it was idiot number 2, I think, where she was like, I really like how he handled the SNC Lavalin scandal. He owned up to it and everything. Yeah, never mind that he broke like 2 laws. Never mind that the ethics committee. There's just going to be people that don't care. They just don't care. And so then is it really then the population, or is it, the politicians, or is it not the population that's voting for these people? And were gaslit properly. They did. I don't think they did a very good PR campaign, the Carney team. I think they got a tremendous amount of help from Trump, who played up all those fears. They and again, I can't prove it, but I'm sure China played a massive role also in the funding. Turned out that they had one of the biggest blitz funding campaigns ever. In the back of my mind, I think. And one of the things we can talk about a little bit is about Pierre going into podcasts and stuff, which is another thing that people were talking about. I actually agree with his strategic PR team about not going on very, what is now perceived as right-leaning, for example, like Joe Rogan, right? He's not a right-leaning guy, but all the MAGA bros are now like Joe Rogan because, after all, MAGA bros are all into MMA. So all the people that are asking, why didn't you go on Joe Rogan? I think we could talk about that too. So I'm not catastrophizing. And my stance as a believer, as a Christian, God is still on his throne. It don't matter who's running the show. Ultimately, it's his call. And for me anyways, I'll talk just for me, and I'm not preaching at people here. Although I would certainly hope that some people would hear my rationale, those that do believe. Ultimately, it's his say. Nothing happens with it without his say, and I think I've had to reconcile with that, even though I don't agree with it.
Yeah, well, it's sitting here. We agree, on the biggest point I think you just said, which is, I'm not sitting here like catastrophizing. I'm not worried about, like I said this on stage. Okay. I actually pulled up my speech that I wrote, and said at the start of the Cornerstone Forum, and I quoted Proverbs twice. I've been reading Proverbs every single day, matching up the day to the proverb and reading it because, to anyone listening who's never picked up the Bible, you just go pick up Proverbs, just flip to Proverbs and start reading that book. And you're like, holy crap. Like, this is just implement these things into your life and things will get drastically better immediately. And one of the things that, I prayed about it before I went on stage, about it, the morning of actually, on the 10th. And in that proverb, it said, when the storm has swept by, the wicked are gone, but the righteous stand firm forever. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I have very little control over who gets elected. I think we're seeing that, right? Like, obviously the show helps people get informed, and other shows as well. You're talking to like a big, whether it's an issue or just we're starting to see what society is in Canada, and they're voting Liberal no matter what happens. And there's, on the flip side, there's people who vote Conservative that no matter what happens, right? And when I read the Bible, I'm like, I could stress about it, or I can just pay attention to what's going on, continue to point out what's wrong in the world, and try and highlight some wonderful things that are happening in the world too, because there is great things going on. And I don't know, like,
well, on that point, my wife and I, we were talking the other day about this whole idea of election voting, and we had this talk about, that famous scene where, like, and again, back to Jesus, where he was brought out with the Roman
Pilate.
Yeah, Pilate, where he was brought out before Pilate, where they wanted to kill him. So he's like, you know what? How about I just bring out a complete criminal dirtbag?
Yeah.
And how about I bring out Jesus, the guy that, fed all these people, healed all these people.
Best of humanity versus the worst.
And then he goes, I'm not going to dirty my hands. I'm washing my hands of this. Let them pick. And it was really funny because he lost a vote. But when you read it, it's because there was so much influence and threats by the government at that time of, like, the Sanhedrin, that would say anyone that votes for this guy, you're not allowed to come anymore into the synagogues. So there was a lot of coercion going on, and Correct. He lost. So if the Son of God, the probably the greatest figure, arguably, without argument, throughout history, right? The one where our calendars are literally derived from. Like, every time you sign a check, every time you check your phone for the date, you just go back that many years, that signals the birth of this person. This person was found guilty and lost a vote. So if the greatest person lost a vote, am I going to really go into my cave and say the world has ended? No. But a lot of fun things have happened since you were gone. I heard it was really successful.
Well, one of the things that I agree with you. Actually, the brothers and I were talking about this, and I'm like, and I brought up Pilate and Jesus, because I'm like, literally, that's what they did. Your story's bang on. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, just go read it, and you're just like, and just think about it. I honestly don't care what people. I know there's a ton of Christians on this, but if you're not, and you're just like, oh, they're talking the Bible again, just go read the story, and realize what it's talking about. And on stage, we had Martin Armstrong, and he gave me an old Roman coin. I was trying to pull up who it was. I want to say Probus. Forgive me. He was a general. Anyways, he gave me this old Roman coin because that's how he got his start, and it was a super cool moment on stage. And he sent me the story of him. Okay, and it's in the downfall of Rome, and then in walks this figure trying to stabilize it, worrying about peace and economics and all the good things. And he repositions, once he's got things stabilized, he takes the Roman army and puts them into public works, like building things and whatever. And how does he die? Because the Roman army is upset they're not fighting wars, and they kill him. Yeah. Like the army. And I'm like, so like in my brain, I have this, like utopia. Now, it isn't the communist utopia. It's a different one, right? Of peace and everybody getting along. And
you're starting to finally come to my side. You're starting to see what I mean. Well, I mean, you've always seen it, but I think you fought it. I mean, you've always been a realist, Shaun, but are you seeing what Two's when he calls me like the Frank Castle perspective on things? It's not that I'm cynical or black-pilled, but you're starting to wonder, like, this really good person, and then they kill him. And the gaslighting has been happening in politics for thousands of years. This
since
is why
the beginning of time.
Yeah, since like you and I are not. This is why we're not thrown off, because we have I think a greater context of humanity when we read things like scripture or history. Is that we understand? I mean, Nero set fires to Rome purposely so that he could to blame it on the Christians. Why would you do that? Easy.
I asked people what the original false flag was, right? Because false flags, like at the start, you're like, you pick your one. I always go to Lusitania because there's not a whole lot of emotion around that because it's so long ago, just World War I time, folks. And nobody can get emotional about it because it's so long ago. And I'm like, okay. So for me, that's the easiest, false flag because it's been proven. There's literally shells at the bottom of the sea or the ocean where they can tell you that it was carrying weapons and the Germans sunk it for that reason. And it brings the United States into the war. And I'm like, you can't argue it. You could try, but all the facts are right there. Now, have there been false flags since? Oh, for sure. But like, I asked somebody, what's the original false flag? And one of the guys pointed an arrow. And I'm like, you go read that. And you're like, man, this isn't a new idea. None of that, there is nothing new under the sun. And one of the things I like about Armstrong, riding around with him for several days and getting to, just pick his wonderful mind is, he likes history and he likes cycles, and everything runs on cycles and these different things. And, you can believe it or not, but like you watch this and you're like, human beings, we're just awful to each other at times.
I mean, there's a reason why we have the English adage or saying, a new coat of paint. That infers that it's the same old with literally a new coat of paint. And this has happened over and over. And people know this from Machiavelli to all the philosophers. They all knew, right, that this whole thing was corrupt. Two funny things before we get into more contemporary issues. So my brother, and I'm going to ask him one day if I'm allowed to share his thing, but he's on Instagram. He has a very large following. He's into Egyptology. Okay. And he's not into the alien Egyptology stuff. He's into actual Egyptology. So think Vesper, but think a smarter Vesper when it comes to like archaeology and everything like that, if you could possibly imagine
that. He's patting himself on the back right now, folks.
Jokingly, yes. So he actually informed me, even back all the way back to Egypt. I think it was, I'm not going to say Akhenaton, but or Imhotep. I don't know, the third. So did you know one of the pharaohs in the entire dynasties of pharaohs canceled out the entire body of gods and said there's only one God? Did you know that? He was a monotheist, and he enforced monotheism. Look him up. I think it's Imhotep III, okay? But look him up. So what happens? They kill him. Why'd they kill him? Easy. Because if you take away all the gods and you centralize it to one god, all these temples of the god of Isis, the god of Anubis, and all these people have no more money. They don't collect offerings anymore. Business becomes centralized to the federal government under Pharaoh. And now everybody and their gods are offended, but really it's all politics, right? This whole thing is politics. The guy became a monotheist and they killed him because of this. And I find that extremely relevant to this conversation, that there's always been politics and there's always going to be gaslighting. There's always going to be friction between people's agendas. And this has shown itself throughout all of history. I mean, we're not going to get into the Bible more, maybe later on, but it's human nature. Remember how when I first came on your show, we talked about human nature. Humans decide the outcomes they want. It's not like, all these people that say we're ruled. Listen, man, if everybody voted rationally, critically, or understood what they were voting for, beyond their ideology and only worldview, it's people that have the power. There's a line from V for Vendetta. I'm not sure if you ever watched it. I'm sure you have. Of
course. Everybody was watched V. It's a great film.
So he says, when Evie Hammond is talking to V and she says, my parents are afraid. And then V says, people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. And if the people, like in this election, voted close to 50% after 10 years of scandals, then the problem is not the leaders. The problem is not the leaders. It's just not.
Well, to bring in another film, I've been, you've seen Godfather, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay.
I patterned my life after. I'm just kidding.
I watched it when I was like 20 because I heard it was like, oh, this is the greatest film ever, and I can like recall my thoughts on it when I was 20. I watched it when I was 20, and I was like, yeah, it was a good film, but can we just fast forward to the last, like, I don't know, 15 minutes? Like, that's the best part, and I don't know why they had to take so long, right? That's roughly a synopsis of Shaun watching it. I watched the second one when I was 20. I thought the same thing, and I didn't watch the third because they were just too slow moving for me. Fast forward, I just turned 39, Vesper, and
Happy birthday.
well, thank you. And I watched. It came on the whatever about 3 months ago, and I should watch it because I found, as I start to see things and understand things, movies have different meanings. Some of them are really crappy now. Some of them are really deep, and it's no different than looking at the Bible or any book that I've read in the past. If I go back and read it, I'm like, holy crap, that's so right. So I started watching The Godfather, and I was on, I don't mean edge of my seat like I was sitting there like, oh my God. I just mean I was into it the entire time. I cannot get past how well written that movie was. And, at the end, spoiler alert, Sonny gets killed, not the oldest son, but the second oldest. He's in command of the Godfather's, the realm of the mafia,
Sonny is the oldest brother.
I thought the one that was went to Vegas.
Fredo is the second.
Okay, so Sonny is the oldest. All right,
Yeah.
I got that wrong. Okay.
Yeah, Sonny got killed for his anger issues, but Fredo got killed for, and I won't.
Well, and Sonny is, I as soon as I was done with it, I'm like, Sonny was me. Like, I watch it and I'm like, how do you get to somebody who's protected, sitting in this castle, with guns everywhere? But you can't. So what do? They know he's angry. They know that he's if you spur that on, he's going to run out. So they find a way.
Yeah,
to get him
just to add context to everybody in case you forgot.
Sure.
So Sonny has a sister, and in the movie, the man that married her, who married into that family, the Corleone family, Sonny's sister is a Corleone, beat her up, right?
Early on.
Right, and then he warned him if he ever does it again, he'd kill him. And so the enemies of Sonny, or this new Godfather,
of the Corleones,
paid off that husband to beat up his sister again, so that he would, like you said, come
so that
out.
she would call him and tell him what's going on, and he would forget the entire situation, that walking out the door with nobody around.
And the sister had nothing to do with this. In fact, she tried to stop him.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, she tried to stop him, but he, like you said, his anger, they knew that he was very hot-headed, right?
And so out he goes, not thinking about the repercussions, races off, nobody can get to him, and they kill him. And, I go, that partially is the Canadian population. We're so easy to offend that, the Trump thing, right? What happens? Right. Everybody turns off critical thinking and goes, forget about the last 10. You go, how did you forget about the last 10 years? Well, how did Sonny forget about the fact he's in the middle of a war, and if he steps outside the front gate, he's probably dead? Well, he did. Now he goes. And and of course,
panic. Panic. It doesn't matter if it's anger or not. It's emotional reaction
response.
without thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. But by the way, this has been a problem not just on the left, right? On the right, for example, this whole separatism thing. So there are people that are well adjusted in their view of how Alberta must separate. They have valid reasons, they have good reasons, and they have a good strategy. But then you get like the wackadoodles completely, like, we're going to burn, we're going to lose everything. Our grandkids are going to have to eat soccer shoes. And like, they just go completely to that side, and they want to trigger a reaction. And it makes no sense. So we're not saying, some people overcompensate, because particularly in our socialized media world, right? Emotions play very big roles in whether it be becoming popular or inflaming people, or inciting people to something, and the rhetoric sometimes goes overboard, right? And I think what you and I, and maybe many others that are probably listening and watching, is that there's always a middle, right? And that middle is often, because of the hijack of emotions, right? Whether it be in the front part of the brain, the frontal cortex, or in the hippocampus, it overrides reason, right? This is the problem, is that whether it be politicians or bad actors in the population, they know that you can help override reason, right? So, look, Is Carney, let's use Carney as an example, okay? Is Carney a globalist? Yes. Is Carney selfish? Probably. Is Carney an elitist? Yes, he is. Like, let's go on and on. Okay. But like at the end of the day, the problem is a collective problem, right? If you had never met Mark Carney or seen him on TV or whatever, and then you ran into him into a restaurant, I'm sure he'd be delightful. I'm sure he'd say, hi, how are you? Oh, sorry if he bumped into you, right? So to separate what the policies are and what the man is and all these stuff, we need to do that and criticize the policies and the worldview so that we could at least say, all right, in the next 4 years, let's assume, hypothetically, he actually helps Alberta. I'm not saying he's going to be perfect, but let's say he does. Let's say, I'm not saying, I don't think he will, but let's assume he does. Then what's everyone going to say? Let's say he scraps the cap on emissions, right? Then what? So nobody entertains these possibilities. They're like very, I don't know if you've noticed this either, Shaun. They're very binary. They're all white or all black. And nobody entertains. I'm not saying it's not white or black. I'm saying no one entertains. What if there's between white and black, there's this whole spectrum, and you have to decide based on where you believe he's going to land on that spectrum. I mean, if you want to get into it, some of the stuff that he's already done with, and I'm going to send you the link, by the way, just so that we can bring this up to people that are not up to speed. He appointed some new people to his cabinet. And I'm going to drop this here in the chat, so if you want to just share this,
Sure.
It's from CBC, and you can just see some of the names of who he dropped. Now, that doesn't make him good, by the way, because he dropped these people. But this is just so you can understand. Like, the guy was supporting Trudeau from the 2021 fiasco, of the economy, and that's. Oh, by the way, if it's okay with you, at some point, I also I had something go viral that I want to share, and it's about what happened in the House of Commons that I think your viewers need to really hear about. Remember that whole COVID funding and how we got into this whole inflation and all this stuff, and how the Bank of Canada came out and said we didn't print money? Well, I didn't crack it, but I shined a very big light over this, and I'm hoping today we're going to be able to explain what exactly happened.
Sure. Let's start here. Here's the article you just sent. Carney shows 10 ministers from his first cabinet the door.
Yeah, Jonathan Wilkinson's out. Bill Blair is out. Cody Blois from Ontario. Ali Alassi gone. And some of these people, I mean, they're not big. One of the guys, I don't know if you remember Nathaniel Eskine Smith. This guy got this guy right there. He got all pouty online because he wasn't offered the position, and he got. So there are some things that have changed, and one of the things that I also find fascinating is there's a website that I sometimes go to called The Logic, and I'm going to share this with you also, if you don't mind. This one, and I want you to just kind of look at the first two paragraphs if you want to just read this, because I found that super fascinating and why he's beginning to do this.
Of course, I need. It won't let. Here, give me a sec.
Well, I mean, I wish I could read. I could just read it to you. It's up to you.
Let's see here if I can. I'm sure I can. Okay, here's what it says, folks. Prime Minister Mark Carney unveiled his new team of cabinet ministers intended to signal a sea change on major economic files and departure from former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's version of the Liberal government.
So that's important. He's trying to make a departure, right, from what Trudeau. He's distancing himself from the whole Trudeau thing, hoping that the Liberal brand will recover. And look what he does.
Oh, and then it doesn't give me any more than that.
Well, let me read the rest.
You read the rest.
Yeah, Carney appointed 15 new faces to his inner cabinet circle of 28 ministers and created 10 new roles for junior ministers that he calls secretaries of state. Okay? A convention not used since Stephen Harper was prime minister. Okay? Several of the other appointees are new not only to cabinet but to federal politics. Many of Trudeau's stalwart ministers remained in, however, including Trudeau's former deputy prime minister Chrystia Freeland. Our government will deliver its mandate. Blah blah blah. Point is, you can see a shift in the way that he's perceived, or his team is perceived. That there's clearly a majority of the population that does not like that you've distanced yourself from Harper and gone to the Trudeau side. Now that you're in power, let's win those people back by trying to pattern some things after the Harper government, right? And I find that fascinating because that would imply that either he's completely faking this, which is a very big possibility, or he's trying to come off as a centrist. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, is he shooting back like pre-Harper days where the Liberals were centrist? I'll tell you why. He hasn't brought up LGBT the way Trudeau has. Trudeau was doing it like he was being sponsored by it, okay? He's not pushing, let's say, what do you call it? Remember when Zoltan asked him that question at the debate when he asked him about, like, how many sexes are there? He says male, female, right? Even though he has a son, daughter that's trans, he comes out and says male, female. In what world, after the last decade of a liberal party that's been pushing this whole thing, does a new prime minister come in and suddenly just revoke all of that and just say, yeah, it's male, female? You know, even after the next question, he's struggling. That's where Alex kind of got him, you know, about safe spaces for women and everything. But it's coming off like his campaign team is nothing like Trudeau's campaign team. Now, I don't know if it's by design, if this whole thing was one big, you know, call it whatever you want, you know, false flag, like maybe he was always behind it, maybe he still believes in it, but he understands the country's been divided because of Trudeau, and this is not going to help the Liberals stay in power. He's got to bring back the other side somehow to the middle or closer to the left, right? Maybe his team is like, let's give them what they want. Let's throw them their little crumbs, you know. Let's tell them it's just man and woman, right? We're not going to cancel Pride or anything like that. We're just not going to push it as much. Let's not talk about gender affirming surgeries publicly, anyways. Let's just do all these things to quell the conservatives. And so some of the people that he did bring in, for example, and I just recently posted it, he's brought in some Indigenous peoples into his cabinet. That's pertinent, considering this whole separation thing that's been happening and how the Indigenous are all complaining and blah, 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 blah about separating Alberta and whatever. And there's a meticulous amount of moves. He's brought in a quarter of his cabinet is from Quebec. So he's satiating the French side. He's satiating the Indigenous. He brought in I forget what her name was, but a African Canadian or Black woman that's in his cabinet. And it's almost like he's just checking off boxes. Not that there's anything wrong with any of these people being in cabinet, but it's almost like he's just checking off these boxes and coming off more centrist and less radicalized. The only thing that still doesn't make sense is how the hell is Stephen Guilbeault still in the government? That's really the only thing left that I can't make any sense of.
I don't know. I don't know if I have anything to comment. Honestly, I was saying to before start. That's the reason why I wanted to bring you on, because I'm like, you know, the sun rose the next day.
Well, hold on, but that's it. So my question is, I guess to everybody listening is, will it be as good as it could have gone under conservatives? No. Like, I have no doubt about that. I'm not saying conservatives are saviors by any stretch of the imagination, but it would have certainly helped the West a whole lot more. It would have uncomplicated this a whole lot more.
I walked in. This is, you know, you're talking about, you know, saviors and everything. I walked into a gas station. I was driving home from Calgary yesterday, and I drove into a gas station just outside Edmonton. And there was, I wish I would have got out his name, honestly. There was a Muslim man working behind the counter, and I walked in, and he said, I said, hey, how's it going? And, you know, just being polite. He said, it's a wonderful, what would that have been? Tuesday morning, I guess. A wonderful Tuesday. And I'm like, wonderful? interesting. You just don't get. I'm like, what's wonderful about it? He started. Well, I'm living in Danielle's world, and I was like, oh, okay. So you're a Danielle Smith fan? Like, I just like this is. He goes, yeah, I don't mind Danielle. He goes, all of them are corrupt, all politicians. Doesn't matter, what side you're on. And I'm like, interesting. So now I'm like, I think God's great. I'm like, this is cool. All right, walk in. So I shake the guy's hand. I go, tell me about yourself. Where are you from? And he goes, well, I'm from Alberta. And I'm like, no, fair enough. But you mentioned just kind of, then he goes, oh, well, I'm originally from South Africa. And I go, oh, okay. And he goes, but I married a girl, and well, that brought me to Alberta. And I'm like, fair enough. He goes, I've been here 27 years. I'm like, well, that my books makes you an Albertan. He goes, yeah, I get some customers telling me to go the F home and take and all, the nasty side. And I'm like, well, that sucks. I don't wish days like that for you. And he goes, I go, how's South Africa? And he goes, well, before Mandela, we rode at the back of the bus. And after Mandela, we were called non-black. And he goes, so like, there's always divisions. It doesn't matter what politician comes in. They always create these divisions. So I hate you and you hate me. And I go, so what's the solution? And he goes, the golden rule. And I said, well, what's that? I don't.
I know you know what that means, right?
I know what I mean. And he goes, well, it doesn't matter if it's Jesus or Muhammad. They both said, treat others as you'd like to be treated. And
to be fair, Muhammad took that from Jesus, so it was Jesus.
Fair enough. Jesus, yeah, fair enough. I'm just saying what he said, right? And I'm like, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, you have a wonderful day. Thanks for talking to me.
Shaun, I'm sure you and everybody listening, for the last 10 years, it has been a circus of human insanity, where we go from trans issues to COVID issues to transfers of wealth to nobody going to jail to Fauci being pardoned when he hasn't even been charged yet, back to 2014, no accountability.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about on this, haven't we, Vesper?
Yeah, I mean, 10 years of insanity. But is it really 10 years? I've been posting some more historically Canadian political things lately. Jean Chrétien's, one of his friends from Quebec, a liberal organizer, Corriveau, was found guilty in 2017 for basically fraud. Do you remember the ad scam? You've heard of the ad scam thing. Yes. And all that stuff. $6.5 million. And there's 3 other people that were complicit, but they can't even figure out how much money. Arrive scam, where the Auditor General's like, the books were so badly handled, I don't even know how much money was really spent. And yet nobody's going to jail, right? Maybe Corriveau, that one guy in the last 10 years, maybe 2, went to jail. And everybody else gets off scot-free. And so I posted this... I posted this thing on X the other day, and because of twos, right? Ever since twos opened my eyes that I look at things like from the Punisher's point of view, I didn't realize the Punisher had such clarity. To be honest, I always thought it was more like Batman, and twos put me rightfully in my place. It was like, actually, no, you're not looking at it like that. And so there's this line from Punisher Volume 1. I'm going to send it to you if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
You can look at it, and I want you to read it because you'll probably get a chuckle reading it.
Here, I'll see if I can. Wait 1 second here, folks. I'll pull it up on the screen. Okay, here we go. It says, justice is blind because it's been punched in the face too many times. The Punisher.
And we know that this is really what has demoralized Canadians. This is what has made Canadians go through every stage of grief like 5 times over. Justice, which should be just logical. Like, if you are found to be taking bribes, you should go to jail. Not be investigated by your own government and your own party and be found that you broke an ethics rule. When it's what's that saying? Justice for thee, but not for me. right? This two-tiered system of justice that everyone's had to feel, and nobody's held accountable and everything. Yeah, people lose sight at that point, I think, of what's been happening to all of us. And it's understandable why a lot of people would think that there's corruption. And let's face it, every politician, just like that dude that you said that you talked to, right? The golden rule. Well, in politics, there is no golden rule. In politics, it's to get into power, stay in power, make as much money as you can and leave, because it's a career. We call them public servants.
Yeah.
Look, and I'm not saying there hasn't been good public servants.
Oh, for sure. But it's like when it's back in COVID, when I used to, we used to talk about what was going on in healthcare. I always had to say, like, I know good people in there, but there were things going on. Well, politics is no different than any profession, right? The NHL, there's been lots of scandals going on in the NHL. Does that mean all hockey's bad? Are you insane? No, it isn't. I just interviewed.
But I will correct you on something. I'll push back.
Sure.
This is what I'm going to push back. Hockey has a predetermined set of rules that referees enforce. So if you bribe the refs, which has probably happened, but most of the time the rules are very clear and the refs enforce the rules.
It doesn't matter how clearly the rules are, though. People always try and bend them, if not break them, if they think they can win. Take the Houston Astros in the World Series, right? Clear set of rules. You can't do that. But did they take the championship? Did they take everything away from them?
Yeah, but dude, but the pushback is this. If in hockey, the refs are the people enforcing the rules, then for us, it would be the RCMP and judiciary.
Yes.
They're not enforcing the rules. Take for example, Pride, right? Pride Parade. If that's the choice that you want to make, go ahead. That's your life. I'm not your judge. But if you walk around naked with your ding-a-ling hanging out, you're breaking the law.
Correct.
And then when you watch the referee, which is the police officer behind these people in these parades doing this,
correct,
not enforcing the rules,
correct,
then everything is basically gone. The whole thing becomes a banana.
Well, go back to COVID. Black Lives Matter can have thousands of people out. The Prime Minister shows up for that. But if it was any other thing, it's not allowed.
Right.
It's this.
Yeah. It's rules for thee, but not for me. The double standard, the
double standard,
the whole thing that we're living through as Canadians, and I don't even want to say just Canadians. I think it hasn't hit Americans yet. Just what's about to happen in the U.S. either. But since COVID, we've never been the same. I think you can agree to that.
Well, certainly, this show changed. It went 180 in the middle of COVID. I felt like I had no choice, and to try and go back to who Shaun was before those days is impossible. It's just impossible.
And I'm not just talking individually. All of us have our stories, but collectively,
yes, the world has changed.
The world has shifted and changed, and it's like everybody doesn't want to talk about it now, and it's only these kind of independent voices that are still fighting for this. Like, what the hell did we just go through? And who's going to be held accountable? Is Bill Gates going to be held accountable? No. Is Fauci going to be held accountable? No. Is Theresa Tam going to be held accountable from Canada? No. Millions and billions of dollars were spent. I posted a picture the other day also off my timeline that shows per person. I mean, I don't know how well you know this, but I want to share this with you, just the picture itself. And people don't seem to understand what happened in our country anyways. Here, I just dropped it for you. You don't necessarily need to share, but I want you to see it. Confirmed vaccine doses procured per person by vaccine candidate. Canada is literally double every other country. Trudeau and his government, which is going to lead into this whole other thing. And I want to explain to you why this is going to dovetail into the next big thing that I want to help. I'm hoping Canadians understand what happened. Okay. Where did you get all this money? Because if you look up what Trudeau did for emergency, he demanded immediately $500 billion for COVID. That'll change Canada. Are you saying that everything we owe up until this point, roughly $600 billion, You want to double this in a week? Yeah, that's what happened to Canada. And it happened in the US too. It happened in every country, and nobody stopped them. Nobody stopped the government to say, whoa, 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 what do you mean you're going to spend? Well, it's a national emergency. I get it, but it can't just be that we have to look at it now. Can we look at the impacts of what you're about to do 10 years, 20 years from now? You know, in the military and even in sports, there's a cost benefit to everything, and you know this, right? As a professional hockey player that you've played, and you understand sometimes you got to make sacrifices. I've seen teams take their goalie out. That's a massive risk. You take your goalie out because you need to score that last goal. That's a risk. They took this risk, Shaun, and it cost all of Canada basically not just money, but the sheer division, the vilification of everybody that didn't agree with this. And we're not talking about people that take the vaccine, don't take the vaccine. I'm not talking about that. It's the way that the marketing was blitzed on everybody, right? In particular here in Quebec, right? I know a lot of people blame Quebec for a lot of things, but believe it or not, Quebecers like me have had it hard through COVID because we were about to get taxed for not getting vaxxed. I don't know if that happened anywhere else in North America, right? And the pushback, thank God, he was projecting something like $1,500 per person that didn't get vaccinated. Okay, and I don't know if you've had Viva Fry on the show, but
multiple times.
Yeah, so Viva, I met him one time in passing in Montreal. A really nice dude, and I used to love watching his shows. And he chronicled a lot of what was going on in Quebec with the lockdowns and everything. I mean, listening to Viva today compared to when I remembered Viva back then, when he was doing like covering law things and some really quirky things and everything, Viva was completely black-pilled and who could blame him? Who could blame him? The things that happened in that period, he was one of the. You almost always saw him like just smile. I'm not saying he doesn't smile, but it affected him to the point where he's now in Florida. Like he was done. He was done. Now imagine multiplying this over the entire population when a government does this. Yeah, a successful demoralization campaign happened. Then this election happens, and everyone's like, okay, phew, we're finally at the election, and then the Liberals win. Now, onto this thing before we jump into the Bank of Canada stuff. Did you hear about the Terrebonne debacle?
Before we get to the Terrebonne debacle, I just want to say, coming from the forum, right, the event I just did, one of the most beautiful things that I can say about it is the people that come, because they come from all over the world. We had a guy from Singapore, England, Cayman Islands, all across the U.S., all across Canada, fly in to do this. And I talked to one couple from Toronto in particular, and it was before they bought their tickets. They called me because they weren't sure. And they said, like, we don't want to spend this money and then come out there, and we just kind of want to know what you're doing. And so I explained it. And they said, well, how many people are coming? I'm like, well, it looks like, upwards of 600. We had at the high point 650. And they sent me an email just basically saying, thank you so much, because where we live, we can't have conversations like this. We're just, we don't feel comfortable anywhere. And so you see this, like, I don't know how to explain it other than a buzz, Vesper. And all it is people willing to share their thoughts. They don't all agree. They don't all agree on everything, but they're just so thankful to have a place, a community where they can just gladly explain things and change ideas and hear things and then go talk about it. And everybody is looking at the world in a completely different way. And if they don't have that in their communities, where they just have at least from my understanding, an ability to just go and share thoughts and talk about anything from politics across the board to, health or EVs or anything. Just take anything. And they were talking about it all. And it was really beautiful. People smiling and enjoying themselves and all the things. And there was just this glow to the audience that I try to put into words and I don't know how to explain it. It's so cool to see.
Well, I mean, what does that tell you about the conversational climate that's going on in the world? We can't, it's not that we can't say anything anymore. I think what we're living in an existential threat where we have to like almost double, triple check everything that's being said, even with free speech, right? There's just a ton of people that make stuff up just to get popular, unfortunately. And it's very hard to go somewhere where the data is trustworthy anymore. Back in the day, CBC was trustworthy because they reported on the malfeasance of the Liberal Party, CTV also. Now you can't trust them for squat. There was a time I could go to, let's say, my local newspaper, right, in their expression. Now you can barely trust any of them for squat. It almost seems like they're all paid off to lock in step with what the government wants because of subsidies. I would say the last barrier, and I'm sure you would agree with this, was the independent voices, right? To come up and to speak the truth, and they did the research. But even now that's under threat because I'm sorry to say this, I'm not accusing you of this or any of the people that came to the Cornerstone, but there are people even among the independent voices that are basically either being paid off, shilled, name it, right? And if they're not being paid and shilled, they're doing this completely for their personal wealth by inciting people to follow them based on an emotional reaction, where you can't it's almost like, where do I go anymore? Now, I come to your show not because you guys are always accurate, but at least you're honest about what you report, what you talk about. You and Twos, for me, signal two people that are honest about what they're looking into. They bring in people that are really well versed in what they know. They're for the most part, I would say, and I haven't heard anything, but they're very unbiased in their view of what's going on. They're well educated on a particular topic. I go there, but even then I have to double check for myself. And I urge Canadians to not just believe me. Don't believe just Shaun. Don't believe anyone. At least take 10 minutes out of your time. If you hear a claim, if you're not sure what it is, go look multiple things up, read for yourself.
Well, I don't bring people on the show and then think that they're, and this is what I love about my audience. Even this conversation, I'm going to get texts and they're going to love, hate, in between some of the things we talk about. But that's what I like about them. They're using their critical thinking to like listen and take in information and add it to their life, not add it to their life, go search out things. They hear something that doesn't make sense and they'll send me stuff on it.
Yeah.
And that's what we do here. We just bring people on.
But you can understand why, like, for example, the Cornerstone thing, right? It probably matters for people with several different agendas, right? And within those, everyone kind of finds some kind of middle ground together. But the average Canadian, the average human being, right, for the most part, is taking care of their 2.5 kids, 2.5 garage. They have to go to work 9 to 5. Planning a holiday is hard. Their mortgages are becoming more expensive. And they're probably just listening to you on the way from, going to work in the morning with their coffee in their hand. How much of that are they going to actually keep in mind and process? Is there enough storage in their minds to process the world's, let's say, malfeasance in politics, for example? And to be honest with you, a lot of people don't have a lot of context. And I'm sure you know a lot about what I'm talking about, because even within religion, we fight this. It's pervasive in human nature, where even in religion, politics, history, context matters, and people don't have enough time usually to properly gain context. And this is where we're at. Case in point, let's just quickly jump to this Terrebonne thing. Okay?
Sure. Yeah.
So the whole Terrebonne thing, and I'm going to send it to you. Maybe you want to put it up on the screen so that everyone who is watching, here you go. And I'll let you read. I've talked enough. I love your soapy voice. So,
yeah. Here, this is what it says. Okay, the title, it's on CBC. Bloc candidate who lost by 1 vote, considering all options after report of ballot problem. The Bloc Quebecois candidate for the Montreal area riding of Terrebonne says she evaluating her options after a judicial recount that saw her lose by a single vote. So that's one vote. Quoted, following a judicial recount that caused a vote reversal as spectacular as unexpected, I owe it to myself to evaluate all options before us. Nathaniel,
Nathalie,
thank you. Sinclair, design.
Desgagne.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Quebecois, man. Come on, I don't fault you for that.
Wrote on Facebook on Monday, I'll keep you updated on the next steps. Sinclair Desgagne statement comes as Election Canada investigates a possible error involving an uncounted mail-in ballot from a block voter in the Terrebonne riding. Voter Emmanuel.
Now this is the girl that got the envelope, right? She got the envelope from Elections Canada. They stuck, that yellow sticker that they put in with your address and everything, blah, 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 to cover it. They got it wrong. They got her address wrong. She didn't write her address. She just had to fill it in, close it, send it back.
She told Radio Canada that she mailed in her ballot in early April using an addressed envelope provided by Elections Canada, but it was returned to her as undelivered. Election Canada says it appears that part of the postal code printed on the envelope was wrong and that it's working to gather more facts of what happened. Liberal Tatiana Auguste was declared the winner over Sinclair, the incumbent, by a one-vote margin after a judicial recount in an election that returned the Liberals to power with a minority government on April 28th. So basically...
But hold on. You need to jump one paragraph. Just jump one paragraph so people get more context. What happened?
To the final result?
No, Auguste was initially projected to win.
Okay. Auguste was initially projected to win the riding by 35 votes after the election.
So she was up 35 votes.
But Sinclair, who was first elected in 2021, moved ahead by 44
votes. So it swung. It went Liberal, then it swung Bloc. Continue.
Following the required post-election validation process. The win was returned to Auguste on Saturday following the judicial recount, with Auguste receiving 23,352 votes to Sinclair's 23,351. So there's your one vote that separates.
So okay, so I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous. The odds of this happening is tantamount. If you've done, one of the things that I do sometimes in my work is to calculate odds. The odds of this occurring in the way that it did is tantamount to a tornado going through a landfill and building a Cessna plane. There's almost that much probability that these series of events have occurred. 1 to the power of 200 to the square root of 8, right? That this would all land on one vote. And what makes this even funnier is then this girl pops out of nowhere going, hey, you guys didn't count my vote. So what does that mean? Are they tied? Are they going to have to redo that riding? Is this now put into question every riding? How many votes did you cancel out? Apparently they canceled out 800 votes, Shaun. Did you know that?
I did.
So hold on. You mean to tell me, can we see these votes? And Marty up north brought this, and he was completely right on this. Marty was like, we need to see and scrutinize every vote that was rejected. How do we know what you did? What if the person that was doing it is cockeyed and can't see properly? Who was deciding all of this? And how did you decide all of this? And it's all secretive. And now this comes out. This begs the question, Elections Canada, are you going to review every single thing? Because I'm sorry, man, there's no way statistically you can win by one vote. The way that they won by one vote here, Shaun, and this is my opinion, okay, is somebody said, fuck it. Let's just give it one vote and we're done. Let's just give, morons. Why don't you give them at least 5? Why don't you give them at least 10 more? Don't do one. It's absurd. It's literally absurd at this point that you would win by one vote. This is comedy at this point. So you're up 34-35, Liberal. Then you go down and the Bloc is up 44. Okay, so it's close. But one vote close, and then what adds the cherry on this whole cake is then this girl, Emmanuel, comes out and says, well, Elections Canada didn't count my vote.
Because they got the address wrong.
And,
correct?
Right. And again, it's how bizarre, right? Let's not make this bigger than it is. It's how bizarre this whole thing is. You mean to tell me that the win was based on one vote, and you're telling me you couldn't find out of all of Terrebonne except Emmanuel, who voted for the Bloc, that'll put like a crank in this whole thing? Are you serious? It's a joke. And Elections Canada, I don't care what investigations they want to do. A lot of people came up and have been telling me, like, this is not the federal government, it's Elections Canada. I'm like, listen, man, if you think I'm naive to believe that any of these bodies, right, which is going to help us jump into this whole Bank of Canada thing in a second, because people need to know why you are really struggling, and somebody has to explain it in a way, and I'm sure some of your viewers already know this, but we need to explain this so that people understand what happened. The Bank of Canada says it's independent. Elections Canada says it's independent. All these people that say they're independent turn out to be not independent. And the way you know that they're not independent is not because they said so. Hey, you know what? I'll just come out and say, I'm not a man. Yeah, I could make really dumb things and say, you can't corrupt me. Oh, okay. So because you said that you're incorruptible and you're independent, I should just automatically believe you. Yes. You mean there's nothing that happens in the back rooms? There's no checks that are probably traded. There's no, like, remember Brenda Lucky with that whole shooting that happened out in the East, where like what's his name, Bill Blair, was like, I want you to make this go away, and I want you to like do this, and we can't catch her on the phone, and then suddenly she's retired. Like, come on, like, we're reading a comic book, and it's not even a well-written comic book, Shaun. So this is something that I think a lot of people that don't know already is happening in Quebec. There's other people that are now wondering, is this going to turn it into a liberal majority because of all these? What would make this story funnier, Shaun, is if two more ridings flip by only one vote. That's the only thing that would make this funny. Because at that point, it's literally like the government pointing two middle fingers to our faces saying, ha ha, do something about it. That's how I see it. That's what happened in Terrebonne. I'm eager to hear what you think.
Well, when you do the probabilities of it, I hear that and I go, one of the things I wonder with Elections Canada is how many more they got wrong, that they obsoleted because of that.
Yeah.
Obviously that isn't a one-off. I'd be shocked. I'd want to know the probability of that being the only one like that. I would say that's probably the probability is going to be, that happening just once. I highly doubt it. So now you have a problem.
Yeah, and it's not just the numbers, right? That it's one vote. It's how it happened. People need to understand probability isn't counted on the final result. It's the process that led to that result, right? It's like, remember that game in The Price is Right, Klinko? The thing that would go down, clink, 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 and it would hit like a series of random tiles as it was falling down. You could never know where it was going to land. The series of events that led to this, and for Elections Canada to say, yeah, they won by one vote. Really? Okay, so I can't tell if it's Winnie the Pooh authors that wrote this or if it's like something out of, I don't know, Where's Waldo, kind of a comedy. But it begs the question, why is there no visible public review, something that I think needs a decentralization? Elections Canada requires everything. I think requires a visible decentralization. For all the bad things about crypto that I've said in the past, I used to be very involved in crypto, but the one good thing is the blockchains. You can track everything. You can track where the transactions go. You may not know who it is, but you can track them. Why are we not doing a record keeping? Not that you shouldn't count by hand, but that there is a record keeping on some kind of a blockchain of these votes. Now, can it be manipulated? I think anything can be manipulated. Let's be honest, okay? Especially if the government's behind it. I'm talking about a truly independent body of people that take all the information and then we tally everything in that way. But even then, it's an imperfect system. So Elections Canada, you need to be very open, right? Particularly Stéphane Perrault, the director of Elections Canada. You need to come out and show basically everything, because I'm starting to wonder now, and I hate to say this, I'm starting to wonder, how are you invalidating these? How do I know that when the person opened up the ballot didn't smudge it themselves? Are you just asking me to believe you? Do I have stupid written on my head? Like, this is the problem, right? I was there. None of them were wearing gloves. And even if they were, you could still smudge my vote. And all the people that brought their pens, guys, pens are not permanent markers, because if you would have used the permanent marker, it would have pierced it to the back and it would have invalidated it. This whole thing has cast such doubt over the entire election process, Shaun, while you were away, that everybody is now beginning, like, it was one thing to doubt the government, the PMO, the judiciary, the RCMP. I know there was doubts in BC about the elections and everything, but now we're talking federally? One vote? Really? 800 canceled? Really? Can we see them? No. We're doing an internal review. Wait a minute. Didn't Revenue Canada, the CRA, do that? Like, they were audited and they were found to be, they wouldn't give the documents. They refused to basically audit all their COVID spending. This is the world we live in. And maybe I can't change anything. Maybe you can't change anything, Shaun. But you know what? It's good to be aware, like that gentleman that you met, right? Who said, hey, it's a beautiful Tuesday. And yeah, I'm happy with Danielle, but I'm also realistic. Let's face it, there's always going to be class warfare. We're in a class, you and I, Shaun, no matter how many millions you make, by the way, right? No,
Hey.
I'm saying if you were
Sure.
making millions.
Someday, hopefully.
If you do someday, I'd be so happy for you, because you deserve it. But let's assume for a second, even if you made millions, hey, here in Montreal, in COVID, the owners of Guzzo, you know, the movie chain, they were literally yelling at the top of their lungs against the Quebec government that was shutting everything down. Why? Because while there may be a fiscal class separate disparity between lower, middle, high class, there's also a different type of class. It's the people in power and the people that are not. Right? And so this is where we're at right now. We're electing people who get into power, who make decisions. And I hate to say this, even if they feel like they're defending their constituents, it's very unilateral. And the party holds people in check. And yeah, right now, the Liberals are in power. How do I know that Elections Canada is being honest? I don't know. From the past, Liberals have been involved in many scandals. At this point, we've gotten so used to scandals that you can understand why a lot of people are doubting this. But this is something that I felt like people that don't know about this out west, if they haven't heard about it yet, they should know.
Oh, I'm glad you brought it up, because once again, you asked me, do you hear about this? I'm like, dude, I've been unplugged for like at least 10 days, right? And missing 2 mashups, which I was getting texts like, where are you? I'm like, kids sports, forum, 12-hour line stream, they all just collided all at the same time. So I'm happy that you're bringing it up, because I think it is important that people know this has gone on in Canada. Now, you've been talking about, you brought it up multiple times, I think, that you want to get to the banking thing. Walk me through what you're talking about.
So the Bank of Canada, and you're going to have to bring these up on the screen for those that are watching, and you're going to do the reading, because I'll be honest, I'm a good reader, but you sound better when you read. Hold on a second. Just before you open the link I just sent you, I want you to see this, and I'm going to guide the people that are watching this, right, to see something that they probably didn't know. And it's very important that people see this. Very, very important, because it's going to add a reference to people that, unfortunately, here, this is the link. So this is what the Bank of Canada posted on the 2022. Here, click this link. And please share this, okay?
Yeah, I'll bring it up here. 1 second. Okay, here we go, folks. There you go. Okay, so Bank of Canada, you asked us if we printed cash to finance the federal government. We didn't. Keep reading to learn how we supported the economy from the shock of the pandemic. It says the pandemic has been a crisis like no other. As a result, we took various measures like buying bonds to support and ensure a strong and stable economy. We bought existing government bonds from banks on the open market. Why? This helped us. This helped unblock frozen markets at the start of the pandemic. It let households, companies, and governments access
Okay, all
funding.
this, you've lost already everybody. Because let me tell you why. Not that people don't know what bonds are, but what exactly happened. You may not have known this, Shaun, and I don't know if anyone has brought this up on your show throughout the whole time that you've been talking about COVID, inflation, all this stuff. Did you know about this? I'll drop it in. You need to share this now. And now read what I've learned. What is it? Is it too funny that I'm sharing these?
No, I laugh because I'm like, in my brain, you get a lot of guests that come on the show, and you're one of the very few that always shares links, and I'm just, I'm rolling here. Okay,
Stay on your game, bro.
that's
Read.
right. Okay, this is what Vesper, Bank of Canada and the Liberals caused COVID inflation. This is okay. Here it is. Okay.
So what did the Bank of Canada just say a minute ago?
They didn't print money.
Yes. Right? Okay.
The federal government under Trudeau and the Liberals bypassed Section 18J in the Bank of Canada Act, which caps borrowing from the Bank of Canada at 33% limit of their projected annual revenue in 2020-2021. Because they couldn't borrow more than a third of their revenue, they opted to circumvent the process by using Section 18C of the Act, which allows the Bank of Canada to create liquidity without a cap by selling bonds to banks and repurchasing them via settlement balances, a unique form of money reserved for the central bank. They flooded the market with fake money, which is called quantitative easing. Why did they do this? Because Justin and his Liberals shut down the Canadian economy during the COVID, and the Bank of Canada subsidized their damaging policies by creating money from thin air to compensate using the sale and purchase of securities found in Section 18C to the tune of $400 billion.
Now watch this. Continue. Keep this up. Click this link and watch what they did.
Did you just send me a new one?
Yes.
Okay, the bottom one. Okay.
Now I want the people that are watching this, I want you to understand and the people that aren't hearing, that are listening to this, I'll explain what happened.
Okay, you just want me to read this one, Vesper?
No, you need to
put it on the screen?
Yeah, because you have to see what it says, right? Like, we could read it, but I want people to see it with their eyes that are watching this.
Okay, so it says, if anyone doubts that the Bank of Canada covers its inflation tracks, compare the 2020 definition of settlement balances on their site to the 2025 version. Thankfully, someone screenshot it. Why did you change it from type of money to type of deposit? Created at Bank of Canada.
So what's the premise? What's the premise here? The premise, and keep it up because you're going to share one last thing to explain this to people that are seeing, and this is the last link you'll be sharing, okay? But let's stay on this for a second. Tiff Macklem goes on and tells everybody, we didn't print paper money. Okay, you didn't print paper money. No problem. How did the government get so much money when they asked for $500 billion? You can't loan from the Bank of Canada, right? You can't loan. You read it a minute ago. It's set to a third.
33%. Yep.
Right. The 33%. That year's revenue in that video, by the way, Shaun, I urge you to watch it and share it with people. The one that you read about the inflation caused the COVID inflation. Pierre Poilievre highlighted and showed evidence that year's annual projection was $352 billion. A third of that would have been $118 billion. How is it that the Bank of Canada is now sitting at $400 billion? The Act forbids you from basically 3 times above the limit of 18J. Now, let's get something clear. What they did was not illegal, but it was very dirty. Section 18C deals with securities, things like bonds. The way that Trudeau and everybody got around this was they said, all right, well, we clearly can't ask for a loan because it would be illegal. I know. Let's sell bonds to banks. Then on the secondary market, let the banks sell them to the Bank of Canada at a higher rate. The Bank of Canada buys all this, and then returns all this under the guise of settlement balances, which what Tiff Macklem called in a video that you could watch on my wall. He said it's a specialized. Look what it says. You still have it up there. What do they call it? Are a unique type of money that central banks create. So it's not real money. They flooded the economy with fictitious numbers after buying these bonds to inflate liquidity for Trudeau so that they could spend on vaccines, campaigns, and everything. So this whole thing was to circumvent the process of a loan. They sold bonds. Have we ever sold close to $400 to $500 billion in bonds this way? No, but there was no other way to do it because there's no cap on that act. Now, last thing, and I'm dropping it in for the people that are watching. This is how it worked. This is how the process worked, and I'll stop on this because this is a big deal, folks. This is a very big deal that you need to understand how this works. And you could click the picture to make it bigger if you want to.
Yeah, I think that'd be wise. Yep. Oops. There you go.
So you see how it works. The Canadian government, under Justin Trudeau, the Liberal Canadian government, sold the bonds to the banks. The banks sold it to the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada canceled them out by buying with something called settlement balances. We loaned ourselves money to buy to sell these back and give it to you in liquidity.
Can I Vesper, do you mind if I try and put it in my mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to, because if I'm listening to you correctly and everything you just put, this is I just want to make sure I'm getting this clear in my brain, and then you can tell me where I get it wrong. We had a 33% cap, right? So they can't just go out and print as much money as they want. They have a problem. They want more money. So the way they get around that is instead of printing 33 or the 400 million themselves,
borrowing money from the Bank of Canada.
Correct. What they do is they issue bonds, which looks like they're actually getting money. Correct? And then that bank sells to the Bank of Canada. And then they turn around and settle that balance. So it's almost like money in, money out. It shows it, but there's actually nothing there. Then it comes back to the central bank, and it sells it to the Canadian government. So they actually get it, but they call it something different than printing money because they didn't print money. But they get what they want without having to ever say it, because it's not a lie. It's like the politicians saying, we never forced you to get vaccinated. And in one sense, they are absolutely speaking the truth, are they not?
Yeah.
Nobody put a gun to your head and said you had to do this. But we can all admit, well, yeah, but you went about it in a way that was pretty much forcing us. Yeah, but we didn't force you. And so what they're saying here is, we didn't print money. What are you talking about? We did settlement balances. What are you talking about? We didn't do any of that. And so when I look at this, it's a very clever,
right, not
way
illegal, not illegal,
correct,
but very clever. And it's shocking that 18C of the Bank of Canada Act never had a cap on even the sale of securities. They circumvented this whole process by working this way and flooded the market with money that doesn't exist, causing an inflationary crisis.
Which is like printing money.
Basically.
Right? When you say they flooded the market with money that doesn't exist, it's
but
like
then Tiff
printing
Macklem,
money.
to talk to all the people that think printing money is, we actually printed $100 bills.
Yes.
What a lie. If you go back, and I don't want you to, but if you go back to the original post, look what he said. The first thing where Bank of Canada made that first statement about printing money.
Was it in the CBC article? Forgive me.
No. On X. Remember when they said, let's explain to you why?
Oh, no. I got so many.
I know. But why is this important? If the Bank of Canada, and I've just demonstrated this to you, Shaun, and to the people that are watching, maybe not listening, but we're trying to help those that are just listening. If the Bank of Canada, this independent body, apparently, right, self-proclaimed independent, Tiff Macklem, I'm independent, the governor of the Bank of Canada, comes out on X and says,
Right here. I'll bring it back up.
Yeah. If you asked us,
if we printed money to finance the federal government,
no. Listen. Words matter.
Yes.
What's the word they use? Not money.
Cash.
Cash.
Sorry, cash.
Because in the brain, they're going to make sure that.
Well, look at me. I read it as money, right?
Right. You see, this is important. These things. This is what people like me do for a living when we do our marketing. Right. The words matter. If I say cash, you don't think digital money in your account.
You think $100 bills.
$100, $20, whatever. Okay. Did we print cash? We didn't. You didn't? You mean you didn't create money? No, we didn't say that. We just didn't print cash. Now look what it says. 2 of 5. Look what it says. As a result, we took various measures
like buying bonds to support and ensure a strong and stable economy.
Keep going. Now that you have the context, you're going to see how this makes such a joke. Why?
Then it goes on to say we bought existing government bonds from banks on the open market.
But who made that decision?
The Canadian government.
Hold on. Right. But hold on. Are you saying you had no idea, Tiff Macklem, that the Canadian government was going to be playing this scheme by selling bonds? Why are you buying bonds?
Go back to this.
Yeah.
When you actually put these side by side, right? We bought existing government bonds from banks on the open market. Well, then just come back here. Where did they start from?
Right. And wait, are you thinking that Shaun and I and everybody listening is so naive as to think that the Bank of Canada governor did not talk to the Prime Minister of Canada about this? We took extraordinary measures. Who are you in lockstep with here, bro? How did Trudeau get $500 billion when it wasn't on hand? You're lying. If the Bank of Canada is going to engage in this kind of lying or twisting of what the truth is, why didn't they come out and say, we didn't print cash money, but we did create something called settlement balances, which is a type of central bank money we created, not we borrowed, not we bought, we created. So if you go back to the original post that you said that you were there, look at the 3 of 5. Look what they say.
We bought existing government bonds from banks on the open market. Why? This helped us unlock frozen markets at the start of the pandemic. It let households, companies, and governments access funding when they really needed it.
Yeah, remember when banks were just giving out everybody $20K, $40K, $60K in loans? This is why it was so easy, guys. This is why you were looking around wondering, how are these people getting these loans? This is why. Now keep going. Look what it says, 4 of 5. Now, with the benefit of context, Shaun, this is going to outrage. It should outrage not just you, but everybody listening and watching.
Buying bonds also pulled down interest rates across the economy. This lowered the cost of borrowing to help Canadians get through the pandemic. It goes on to say we did not print cash to pay for the bonds. We bought the bonds with settlement balances, a kind of central bank reserve, not with banknotes. What's the difference? Settlement balances don't permanently add to money supply. Unlike cash, we can remove those reserves from the system, and you can see that we've been doing just that. Read more about quantitative easing.
Right, so there's quantitative easing, which is fake money to boost liquidity, and then there's quantitative tightening, which is to pull out this fake money, basically. But nevertheless, folks, when it went up, to those that can see the screen, that the Bank of Canada is man, they are complicit in admitting this on their own post. Look at the amount at the peak, Shaun. $400 billion you pushed into the market.
Correct.
And now you said because you're pulling it out, it's fake money. You're using monopoly money to boost and devalue the currency. This led to the housing crisis because of interest rates. You created this problem. Now, why is this all important? Now that we've kind of beat this horse to death, this is supposed to be, Shaun, an independent organization from the government doing this. When you and I just looked at a chart, looked at the flow of the way they did it, if they are this full of shit, sorry to say it, why should I trust Elections Canada? I didn't trust the Hogue Commission. I didn't trust the Rouleau Commission. I didn't trust David Johnston and all of his BS. Every single supposedly independent body has been working lockstep with this liberal government by circumventing what would normally be, which is what unfortunately Canada is based on, this honor system. This is why people like me are atrocious to people that still are very self-virtuous. They believe in a virtuous Canada and that everybody, we mean well. We're all good, do-gooders and blah, blah, blah. Snakes have invaded dressed as really good people and are leveraging this entire bizarre and impotent system in the sense that, and I'm not saying there's no justice, I'm saying it can be circumvented, it could be gamed, and it's being gamed. And for the people that talk about elections, if the Bank of Canada lied to everybody and said, we didn't cause inflation, we didn't print cash. Yeah, we know you didn't print cash, but you did make money. You did create money, digital money that you gave back to the government. Now Elections Canada is saying, well, we're doing everything we can ethically with our investigations. I'm sorry. If you're still very naive, not saying your listeners, maybe to new listeners that are maybe hopefully listening that are coming from the opposite side of the aisle. And by the way, I think if conservatives did this, I would call them out just as much. In fact, I've called out Brian Mulroney in the past for the stuff that he's done. I've called out all these people. But I wanted you to see this, Shaun, because if the Elections Canada debate is probably the biggest thing right now, because it will form a liberal majority, and they claim to be independent. Well, here's another independent entity, the Bank of Canada. How do you feel they acted?
Right. I guess none of this shocks me, Vesper. Not like I and that I don't mean I'm black pilled or whatever. I go like, this is what this system or these people or this group of human beings, they've been doing this now. We started this off with going back to Jesus. Like, this isn't something. Certainly, the way it's playing out might be a little bit new, but I don't know. It just doesn't shock me. It doesn't shock me.
But this is a great case for why Alberta wants to leave. See, I'm not saying Alberta and all of it's not a perfect system either, I'm sure. Okay, there's going to be hiccups and corruption even if you guys gain independence. But I'll tell you what, it's one thing to have your own house in order than to basically be controlled by a body that has surreptitiously usurped all these organizations to throttle you. This is where, as a Quebecer, and I've said this before, and I say this, Shaun, I stand the most to win because it's going to piss off twos that I'm still in Quebec and I'm still collecting $14 billion from you while you guys get toothpicks from Quebec or poutines or whatever. I shouldn't be complaining, right? I should be like, hey, it's the way it works. You were outplayed, blah, 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 blah. No, this is why Alberta should gain its independence. Because if the Bank of Canada, Mr. I'm independent, Elections Canada, Mr. I'm independent, we only call this riding by one vote and send somebody the wrong address. And we're investigating privately. We will never make this public. Mr. I'm the Hogue Commission, and we're not going to reveal any of the names of the 11 traitors that basically were working with foreign agents to usurp our government and our democracy and elections. We're not going to arrest that guy that put a bounty. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. Hey, I will talk in the Quebec accent. I will tell you, Albertans, get the hell out as fast as you can. Be smart, smarter than we were in Quebec, and galvanize together, make very strong, and leave. I am for you. I don't want you to leave, but you have every right to leave after everything we talked about today, Shaun. Everything that you saw to help you catch up with what's been going on. The Liberals may not necessarily be the devil, but they're doing a whole lot of demonic stuff, and they've been doing a lot of demonic stuff that it makes sense why a province is fed up. And it's not just energy. It's all the red tape. It's all the lying. It's all the grandstanding and gaslighting and everything. I would want to run if if we were to use the example of the federal government being an abusive, overbearing father, I would want to leave that house too.
Vesper, I have appreciated you coming on, and I'm glad it worked out in both of our schedules.
Same.
I think you've given not only myself but a ton of people some things to chew on, and that, sir, is a good thing. And well, we'll wait until we get the crew again together for a little roundtable discussion online. But thanks for doing this today, and
My pleasure.
all the best out east. And we'll look forward to paying attention to you on X. If you're not following Vesper, make sure you look them up, and look forward to having you back on here at some point.
Thank you so much. God bless you. And to everyone listening, thank you for listening to me.